So today we continue with the learning on Xsoar integration. We want to develop some integrations use for Xsoar Studio, and as we understand that for the Cortex Xsoar is actually uh, is not just an automation, orchestration, and collaboration kind of tools, but is also communicate with any other third-party tool so that it can uh, do some response, such as using the antivirus to uh, block some kind of endpoints or change some rules inside the firewall or anything like that. It's also talk to SIEM or any asset to get information, and by doing that it has to interact with those kind of tools, and the way that it interact with it is through API. Of course, there are some integration that do not use API, but most of those kind of integration that you develop yourselves with mostly using API. And not that every time if you want to develop something with Xsoar, you have the environment to develop it, meaning that you may not have the servers, you may not have the installation resource to set up the testing environment yourself. So you have to come up some kind of way to like create that kind of server, mocking that kind of server to have it respond to you the same way that a real server will respond. So, for example, in this situation, I have to develop a integration with Cuckoo Sandbox, and by installing the sandbox, setting it up, I already take quite some time, but um, I really cannot uh, finish doing the installation within a 2 days kind of time, 2 days period. So instead of installing and creating the environment itself, I create a server and it gonna mock the response in JSON format that coming from Cuckoo. So the server, the environment that I set up will talk to this server somewhat similar to a real server. By doing that, we can develop the different type response of the server, and we use some kind of tools called Json-server to simulate the response that will be received by the integration. And we can actually using this JSON server to create a different type response. So for example, right, we for the very basic setup, I will go through this one quite fast because it's not the main content of this, but the other more advanced stuff. But if you just want the basic stuff like get response or post response to the to a specific UI, then you can just install the JSON server, then create some type of JSON db.json file here. So it gonna be a database file, kind of file, using the JSON server, so that if you want to get any information from it, you're gonna get the content inside this db.json. So if let's say I port a get command into a server /post/1, I will receive this ID one title JSON server author type code cap result. If I go to the URL /command/1, then I will have this second response. So for the Cuckoo servers, right, we have different type of post and guest resource over here. For example, if let's say I go to a task list, then we will see that is a URL like this, slash task slash list, and the example response will be like this kind of JSON format here. So to create this JSON file, I just come to the documentation of any integration and see the example response, and I put it in a JSON file. So for tag list over here, you can see that I put um, the response in the task list inside this part over here. So I want to create a file that can respond to all different type of query coming from different URL like this. So instead of create one separate file for different, I combine them into one single file. As you can see over here, I have a get to task view one, which is task slash view slash one. Then I add another one for the task list, get task list, then task create file, create URL, task delete, and all other things. It's just a different response, so I combine into one single file. And for this single file, when I running using the Json server, I just use it the Json-server slash dash watch and the file name. Then we will have a JSON server to run. But if let's say if we want to run custom rules, like for different type of file, we should not be like slash like for this, right? We shouldn't be using slash task view one. Instead, I want to use task slash view slash one. So I will create a kind of route file so that I can have a different route going to different kind of content. And in order to do that, I create a routes file over here. As you can see that the routing is for this URL, it will go to this content, and the same for other things. Then after that, we can run this route file together with the JSON server. JSON server dash watch db dash JSON, and with the option route behind. So with this is a basic way of running JSON server to have a content and the route. But if let's say we want to run some other thing, if we want to support authentication, we support additional way of like receiving the file into this server, because in Cuckoo integration we also have is a sandbox, so it's actually accept files. So we want to have a way to upload the file into the server itself, and by doing that we will have to use additional express middleware, because JSON server is also running Express, so it supports to run other Express middleware inside this, and we create a kind of server.js file, and this file is actually running the JSON server inside. We have the router, which is the file to run the content here, and we also have the route later on we will see is inside. So by adding this into a JSON to a JS file, we can run using Node.js. So all the content will be putting into the files, and we will run by using Node and the server file. In this, we will have a JSON server listening to it. If you want to handle port, push, and patch, you can use body parcel to listen to those kind of method, and you can change the port inside this server here. For example, right, if we want to upload the file into this server, so we can use the muter module, and using the muter module, we create a storage inside the server, and so that we can upload the file and taking the file into the server. As you can see over here, the router is using the combined JSON, which is the content that I created just now for all the cuckoo get and post requests. And for this post, so if let's say someone want to upload the file using a post method, the file will be uploaded to this server at the storage at home.myname.upload, and the response will be task ID 1. So it responds to the uploader to say that yeah, it's already created the task and the task ID is number 1. So this is for uploading. If you want to do some other things like for support mutual authentication. So in this, we use the HTTPS module to support mutual authentication. It means that the client, when they want to upload any file to the server, it has to send the client certificate, and the server also need to send a server certificate to the client. By doing that, we support a mutual authentication between the client and the server. We will have to use OpenSSL, which we can go for additional others way to create it. But in short, it's OpenSSL to create a CA under this server, and the CA will inside the server certificate and the client certificate. And after that, we will send it the certificate, the client certificate to the client, and the server certificate to the server, so that we can send the certificate to each other to authenticate. And within this HTTPS module, we will create options to request for certificate, and using the CA to actually certify the client's certificate and key. From the server, it's gonna send the server certificate and key to the client too. And after that, in this app use, we add additional status to say that if let's say the client is not authorized to upload or to request any information, it will send back the invalid client certificate authentications. And we use this HTTP module to run the app, which is a Json-server that running inside. And we, like normal, we just run node server.js to run the whole file. So after this, right, after all of this configuration, we're gonna see a final file like this that we will use the JSON server to run. Then we use the HTTPS module to request for certificates. We use the muter module to act as a storage for uploading files, and we run the app as a JSON server with the file of those combined JSON response that we created just now for all different type of task lists. And we're gonna use we're gonna send different response to different type requests. If the client do not have the certificate, we're gonna say it's not authorized and send 401. If it passed the certificate authentication and the method is paused, then we're gonna send back the task ID of 1. Other than that, we're gonna send back the response coming from the combined JSON file. And the route files have been added to this GS file, so that we can use variable of different type of UI URL. So when we are using this, then we will go to the task view one object. And last, we use the HTTP module to run the app, which is Json-server, with the option to run to have certificate authentications and listen to port 3000. So it's gonna convert to this as a cuckoo server that have all this kind of response and running as a mutual authentications kind of server. It's not using a basic authentication, but it's mutual TLS. And yeah, that's it for today. We just finished talking about the Json server, which is a kind of server that helps you to create or simulate any type of server response using API kind of servers, so that you can use this to develop your integration in Xsoar. You can actually use this kind of servers to do any other stuff, to do any others development for anything that running using API with the JSON's response. Thank you very much for watching.